Today I'm speaking with an Australian writer, director, and author. She is author of the newly released debut novel, A Room Called Earth. She lives in rural Victoria. My guest is Madeleine Ryan. I'm Aden Nepom, and this is the Changed Podcast. Hello, Madeleine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Aden. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here. I am absolutely thrilled that you're here. I have had a chance to read your book, and I love it very deeply. I'm going to show everybody that I have it as proof that I have been reading it. Thank you.
Ooh,
Yeah.
high five, book five.
um, before I embarrass you with compliments, nope, I'm just going to
Oh
start
dear.
there. I think what I really like about it is, first of all, I have to be really honest, and I haven't taken a lot of time to read books on paper in a long time. Sometimes I'll listen to books in the car, but now I'm not driving anywhere, so I'm not listening to books either. And so it felt like a luxury to sit and read this book. And then on top of that, um, this is by far the most honest and relatable and feminine piece of writing that I have read in a very long time. It was like dipping into my own brain, and I don't know what that says about me or you or what this book means to other people, but I thought this was remarkable. So congratulations on a fantastic book.
Wow, thank you so much. That's such a deep and profound response to it. I'm so happy to have channeled or facilitated that experience, because certainly writing it was kind of that experience for me. So it's really powerful when someone like you parallels that through your reading experience of it, because it was a very, that sense of, I guess, the feminine, or what you
Yes.
mentioned, is really interesting. I haven't had that many conversations with people about that aspect of it, but I think that's a very central part of it.
Yeah, I think so. For people who haven't had a chance to read it yet, I'm going to do my best to try and summarize this. And I'm not a journalist and I'm not a book reporter, so bear with me here. But my rough impression of how I would describe this book is it takes place in the course of an evening, the journey of one woman through that evening, including um, and mostly thoughts that are happening in real time. So that includes the thoughts that come up from the past, and observations about other people, observations about the self in relation to other people. So that's how I would do. How would you describe you would probably do a better job describing your book than I'm doing.
Oh, I don't know about that. That seems to pretty much sum it up. I mean, yeah, it's an adventure inside the mind of an amazing woman as she goes on the journey of a day, a night, a party. And yeah, as you're
Mhm.
saying, comes into contact with different people and moments and experiences that bring up her memories or impressions and observations and sensations. And a lot happens in 24 hours, from
Yes.
her perspective, I guess, and to be inside her perspective kind of opens up, I'd like to think, every moment that we experience, because I think the subtleties or the nuances of our day-to-day life are often lost or something. We're so sort of
Mhm.
distracted. So she's like a homecoming to being at the center of, our
Yeah.
universe or her universe. And then, yeah, she meets different people. She kind of goes for a walk at night in Melbourne, because it's set in Australia, in summer, Christmas Eve. And so she's at a Christmas Eve party. And then, yeah, eventually she kind of meets this guy at the party and has a connection with him. And it sort of opens up our understanding of her and the power of, I think, connection and relationship
Hmm.
through
Hmm.
all the idiosyncrasies and feelings and thoughts that we kind of carry with us everywhere we go. To kind of make a connection with someone, I think, is a bit miraculous. So that miracle takes place too, and yeah, opens up our understanding of her and of him and what it means to, yeah, connect. So
How
Yeah.
close is she to you?
It's
How
a
much of you is in this character?
Yeah, it's a dance between us for sure. I kind of think of her as a relative or like a
Mhm.
mother to child relationship. She's kind of from me, but not me. She's of me, but not me. So there are definitely parallels between us and deep connections, but I see her as a very separate entity at the same time. She's like something I've given birth to or created that is an extension of me, but not me. So, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about neurodiversity, about the relationship between neurodiversity and this particular character's journey.
Well, yeah, she's hugely multidimensional. And I guess I'm autistic. So I suppose I brought how I process thoughts and feelings and the structure of my logic to the structure of her inner world. And I see it as quite multidimensional. I mean, the term neurodiversity I love because it kind of, I don't know, in my mind, I see doors opening and possibilities opening
Yeah.
and new ways of communicating and behaving and thinking and feeling. And so I'd like to think that all of that is present in the novel, because it's present in her. And I'd like to think it's present in me, but in a kind of structural, tangible sense. I guess I brought my own, yeah, the structure of my logic to her inner
Mhm.
world. Yeah, which is
Interesting.
neurodiverse. Mm.
As I because there's a lot of specific attention drawn to that in other interviews that I've seen related to the book, and even on the back cover. But as I was reading it, it was literally the last thing on my mind because it was so relatable to me.
I don't think knowing that she's autistic or neurodiverse is essential to reading the book. You know, I think that it's a beautiful addition. And I felt, I guess, a kind of, maybe I have a hero complex, but a kind of duty or obligation to helping the perception of autism
Mm,
and neurodiversity expand a bit and become a bit more dynamic, because there are lots of assumptions and stereotypes, and it's quite a static, depressing space in a lot of ways.
yeah,
So I
sure.
guess, and particularly for women, it's very, very limited. The dialogue around what it means to be a neurodiverse woman is very, very narrow, almost non-existent, just emerging into awareness. So I guess I see the book as I'd hope that the book can be a powerful contribution to that conversation. But then again, there are no labels or isms used in the book itself. So it was, as I was kind of writing it and she was talking to me, this did not matter to her so much, you know, what she could be labeled as. She has her own ideas about how to define herself and what
Mhm.
kind of shapes her identity in her life, which is quite separate from, I guess, positioning the book in a, is it a marketing sense or kind of socially and culturally and where it fits in the
I don't
world
know.
right
Yeah,
now.
sure.
So, you know, I could imagine in 5 or 10 years, excuse me, that, you know, having it on there might mean a completely different thing, or it might not even be
Mm.
necessary, or I don't even know. It's sort of a constantly evolving thing, like words and labels and meanings often are. So I'm aware of its power. And yes, a lot of people in the interviews that I've done so far have sort of been interested in that. And I think that that's healthy because I wanted it to open up ideas about that. But it's kind of, yeah, running parallel to just kind of the expansive, limitless quality of her inner world. And that's really the most important thing to me, is just how fabulous she is and being
It's
inside her mind and what a ride it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, she's an incredible character. I'm curious, what inspired you to write this book? Because you've done other types of writing, but this is your debut novel. So what's the inspiration here?
Well, she kind of just started talking to me and it had to come out. You know, I had been through a lot of changes in my life, both ones that I'd chosen and then ones that were sort of happening around me. And she kind of emerged once I had space to listen. I think I created space. I guess I moved to the country and I, started eating plant-based, and I deleted social media. And I mean, it didn't all happen at once. It kind of, when I listed off, it sounds like it all happened in like a day. I sort of just, all this happened, but it kind of took time. But,
Uh-huh.
I was in a loving relationship and we adopted animals, and it was like my life started to align with something a bit different and adjust to a
Mm.
different sort of pace. And I think that created space, kind of consciously and unconsciously. And then one night I was visiting my parents, and I was in my childhood bedroom, and my mum had her book group going in the next room with all her girlfriends, and there was, laughter and food sort of happening. And then I just kind of heard her. It was this weird
Mm.
like confluence of time and space, like being, I could see all my childhood sort of, I still got some teddy bears like in that room. And it was just all of a sudden it was really vivid. And like the first couple of paragraphs that are still in the book are the ones that I heard her
Mm.
share with me. And from then it kind of just kept unfolding, and it was about prioritizing her voice and getting to know it and continuing to go where it led me, and creating more space for it in my life, and kind of committing to her development
Mhm.
and letting that blossom and kind of devour me whole over the course of a couple of years.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't so much like an inspiration. I mean, as I was writing, things came to me about its importance. Like I was like, oh, the first person narrative I think is really powerful, for lots of reasons, both to do with kind of existential themes, but also
Mhm.
just in a world that's so outwardly oriented at this point in time.
Mhm.
So many distractions, so many demands, so many, different influences upon our psyches at any given moment. I think it's really interesting to sort of go inside and be what revisit what it is to be inside that, and to have an awareness around that, because it's so easy to get taken out of it constantly throughout the day. So
Yes.
to actually connect with that part of us that's watching
Mm.
the mind do its thing,
Yeah.
I think is hugely powerful. And so for me, it's a really big celebration of that in lots of ways, but also a celebration of the individual experience as a universal experience, and how sacred our stories and memories and feelings and thoughts and influences and distractions are, because it's
Mhm.
easy to
Mhm.
not realize that that's our life. That's this sacred force inside us that defines us, that is every day. So yeah, I guess as it kept unfolding in my life and I was caring for it, those things became apparent, but it's not like they were at the beginning. It was just
Mhm.
hearing her and then giving her room to grow was sort of what happened at the start. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Mm.
Um, so what about you? What about your relationship to change? You mentioned you had gone through some changes. Do you, generally speaking, get excited about making changes, or do you find change in life to be challenging?
It's become exciting. I feel like I've had to discipline myself and learn and grow and master the desire to control everything somewhat,
Mm.
to embrace change,
Mhm.
because I see on an intellectual level now that change is life. Like, in a sense, those words are synonymous to me now, but it took me a long time to work that out and to not be scared of that, of yeah, the moving parts of what it means to be a human being. But now I do find it really exciting. I think change is growth, change is life, change is like fresh air, and to move with changes is a very not just exciting, but kind of, yeah, growth oriented way to be. I read this wonderful quote. I actually thought of you yesterday. I've been reading this book called Inner Engineering by
Mm.
Sadhguru. I've actually got it here somewhere.
Ooh, that
Um,
sounds interesting.
yeah, and it's a beautiful book. And he had this wonderful description about change. And he was like, you know, if a seed wants to become a big, abundant fig tree, it can't stay a seed. It can't be attached to, its size or its
Right.
where it is or how it relates to things. It has to change to become the big abundant fig tree. You can't become that as the seed. So it's like that sense of, if you want to manifest all the things that you dream of, if you want to express yourself, if you want to connect with others and keep evolving in your life, it's
Mhm.
like, well, those things go hand in hand, the sense of change, but also the sense of letting go that comes with change. You have to let
Mhm.
go of what you've known. And I think, yeah, it's taken me, I guess, some mastery to come to terms with that. I mean, it's an hour by hour thing, really.
Yeah, of course
But
it is. I
yeah.
love that fig tree analogy. I'll have to pick up a copy of that book. That sounds
Mm.
lovely. We have a fig tree on our property, and
Huh.
one of the things that happened over the course of the last 2 years, the fig tree is always produced usually two, sometimes even three growths during the year, which is really unusual. My in-laws also have fig trees, and they're lucky if they get figs once. Um,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so it's always been abundant, but it had gotten like a little bit scraggly looking and kind of out of control. So a year ago, we pruned it like way back, and I got really afraid. I got scared. I was really afraid that the fig tree wasn't going to come back, that my husband
Ah.
had taken too much and had pruned it too far. And what happened instead of what I was afraid of is it sprang back like 8 million times stronger. It produced
Ah.
a bunch more fruit, to the point where we're like, "Do we have to prune it every year now? It's too tall. We can't get to the top
Ah.
of the branches." So the fig tree analogy is so lovely because some of the growth that a fig tree experiences is, what the fig tree is wanting to do. And some of the change that our fig tree experienced wasn't something that fig tree chose. We imposed a
Mm.
giant change on it. We were like, well, you don't get this limb anymore, and this limb is no longer part of you, and taking
Mm.
this down. In fact, you're just a trunk now. I hope that's okay, fig tree. And the fig tree
Yeah.
was like, I want to be a tree,
Tree.
so I
Yeah.
think there's just something really beautiful about that fig tree analogy. So thank you for sharing that. I'll have to.
And thank you for yours, because that's so powerful too. That kind of the movement between what you see as good for its growth and what it wants, and how to find the harmony between the elements there. And even your
Right.
description then of, no, you've pruned too far. That's so true to like a dynamic in relationships.
Yep.
It's like, it's too much. You've come to, you're too in there. It's too much. And then for that to actually enable something to come to life in an even bigger way with the combination of energy, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Oh, fig trees. Mm.
Well, Madeline, would you please, if you would, we would love it if you would tell a story from your own life and experience. Would you share a story of a moment of change with my listeners, please?
I would love to. And the one that I've chosen is the moment that I decided to commit to writing more seriously. I was working at a healing centre in rural Victoria, where I coordinated the appointments for palm readers and shamans and, tarot readers and things. And I was working there 3 days a week. And, I had, just to give some context to the moment of change, I'd worked lots of different jobs. I had been a nanny, a life model, a waitress, a factory hand. I was pursuing acting. I'd
Hmm.
been doing lots of different things. I mean, this is summing up sort of, it must have been about 10 years of my
Hmm.
experience. I maybe had these kind of jobs for 2 to 3 years at most, up until that point. And acting was a huge part of my life. I trained as an actor. I was pursuing acting. I was doing theatre. And at the point where I was working at the healing centre, I'd just done my own show. I had written and sort of directed a production and performed it, and kind of through that come to this point where I don't think I realized this consciously at the time, but I was ready to sort of take ownership of something inside myself in a bigger way. And I think being an actor for that long and performing in shows gave me so many amazing experiences and gifts, but it was like I hadn't been at the center of my life. I was craving the spotlight, but it was sort of a process of coming into my own on my own stage, in my own existence. So all of these things were kind of whirling around, and I'd started writing about the experience just kind of at home, of coming off hormonal birth control, which was a really huge step mentally, emotionally, physically. It completely like cracked open my whole, body, mind to wean myself off it. And so that was tied up. So it's a very multifaceted moment, this moment. My parents are both journalists, writers. So I also grew up around writing, and I journaled like crazy, and I studied literature, and I was it was always there. It was always a big part of my identity in lots of ways because of my parents, but also because I was always drawn to it. I was always drawn to kind of expressing through the written word. And when I studied writing and literature, that was a bit of a tormented experience, actually. And I think that scarred me a little bit. I found the sort of the criteria that I had to meet at uni more challenging. And I had this, this lecturer at the start of one of the semesters kind of said, a lot of the good writers in this room are going to fail. In fact, all the ones who are probably going to succeed in this room are going to fail this subject. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know what that means for me. I'm really confused. I think I'm an actor. I don't know who I am. I'm not going to walk out. But for some reason, I think I'm going to remember that he said that for the rest of my life, And so I had this quite fraught relationship with writing, even though it brought me great relief. It was a source of ease and comfort and a part of myself that was soft. And I was so identified with pushing and trying all these different jobs and going for roles in plays and, storming onto the stage and being, the actor. I was the actor. Surely I'm the actor. And also my parents were film and television critics, and they were always watching actors. So it was like, hello, I'm the thing. I'm one of them. I'm one of the beautiful things you can see and watch and celebrate, and think about all the time. Look at me. So it was at this point, though, at the healing center, that I would work on the desk and coordinate these appointments. And they had oracle cards and crystals and all sorts of things in the shop. And I can't exactly remember what the card reading I did was at the desk. I wish I remembered which deck of cards it was and what it was. I mean, using cards has become a big part of my life, but I just remember it was just like a knowing happened. And I was like, I need to do something to care for that part of myself in a deeper way. And I went to the boss of the healing center and I said to her, at the moment I'm conscious that the days I work, it's like there are 2 days. And then it was like I can't remember exactly, but I think I was working Saturday and Sunday and then Tuesday. And I sort of said to her, look, I want to write and I want a solid block of time. So if we could put my days closer together, if we could have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then I could, write the rest of the time, that would be amazing. It would then just give me that psychological sense of like, that's my main commitment and that's what I want. And she was like, no. She's like, no, that won't work for us. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, okay. And I thought for a minute, and I think I talked to my partner and I was like, I quit then. And I kind of found myself quitting for it. And she was like, what? We hired you because I want to write. I need time to write. Like, that's why we hired you. And I was like, okay, well, that doesn't work for me though. The setup, if the days had just been together, psychologically, I could have committed, but you don't want that. And I then don't want to do this. And it was this, all of a sudden I was in this abyss you know, I'd constantly been having these kinds of jobs that now I see the richness of experience they all gave me, and the people that I came into contact with, like her, and like so many were so valuable. But it was this jumping away from whatever that frequency of, you know, constantly searching and being hungry was, into this space of like, okay, it's writing. Like now I really have to commit, because I also need to, you know, survive somehow,
Right.
you know. So it's all of a sudden, so it was an internal change. It was like an internal shift, but had this huge ripple effect through my physical existence quite immediately, because I didn't necessarily expect her to say no to just that small change. But I knew that I couldn't proceed with the commitment to nurture what the feeling writing gave me if I didn't say no in that moment. So it was huge, spiraling through time and space kind of vibes. And I, from there, you know, I explored different ways to write and to get paid, and it kind of became its own adventure and challenge and all sorts of stuff. But like, I fundamentally, though, that sense of committing to the thing that had kind of been there all along, and that gave me a sense of greater softness and
Mhm.
flow and ease, was a huge change for me. And technically now that was 5 years ago, you
Mhm.
know, and I've been in the way of that part of myself, in, you know, with challenges and through varying chapters and stages and guises and whatever. But like, I've essentially been in the way of those lessons and that adventure ever since. So it was such a powerful sort of moment. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for
Mm.
sharing that. That is I can just picture that conversation. And it's amazing to me how surprisingly common that is. I work with companies to teach communication skills. This is something I do, and one of the things that often comes up as examples is people wanna know how they can delicately, gently, um, retain their people while telling them no to things that are benign,
Mm.
like schedule changes. No, it's not and it's not that, and in my mind, it's like, well, let's talk about flexibility and let's talk about, building trust with your folks. So if it's about that you need to turn somebody's schedule request down, what is that really about? Are there a whole bunch of factors involved there? Then you can let them in on that conversation. And if it's because you don't want to, that's something to reflect on, right? Like,
Mm.
if you're just like, "No, I don't like that," then what is that about?
Yeah.
It's worth looking at. And it's surprisingly common. It's surprisingly and it's such a it really it does seem like such a it's a small like, "Just Monday instead of Tuesday, please."
Yeah,
Seems
a
like so
small and
simple.
yet a huge thing. I mean, in some senses, I'm so grateful that she said no, because I'd like to think that I was going to commit to writing in as profound a way if my time had been divided, still having those nice 3 days together as I'd requested, and then, you know,
Right.
the rest of the time writing, you know, that would have been great. But in a sense, her resistance, for whatever reason, kind of fast tracked the growth, you know, as long as I wasn't then going to fall back on, oh, okay, never mind. I won't, you know, which is just as available in those
Right.
moments
Well,
too.
that's that fork in the road, right? That is the
Yeah.
you were presented with a fork in the road. You had your request, you had sort of an idea. She says no, and now you've got two really obvious choices. And sure, potentially there were other choices available to you, but the really obvious ones are for you to just go, "Oh, okay, never mind," or to do what you did, which has led
Yeah,
you down a very interesting path.
it
And
has.
my mother will often say things like, "Because that's the path you were supposed to be on." And I don't know if that's true. I don't personally have any sense of whether that's true or not. The only thing that seems to be true to me is that's what happened. That's the so you are
Yeah.
now on the path you are on.
Yeah.
What do you think would have happened if you had just said, "Oh, well, never mind then, I'll just keep doing this"?
I can't help but feel that I would have continued to have been presented with that fork in the road over and over and over again until I could kind of surrender, I think. I mean, there's something to what your mum says about destiny, I think, but I think that we have to be active players
Yeah.
in our destiny. It's like it sits there like waiting and it will keep appearing, but we make the choice about whether we're ready for it to take the jump or to commit or whatever it is, you know. And I think I would have kept coming up against that, or not against, but I would have kept ending up at that fork in the road, as you
Hmm.
described it, in varying guises. I suspect just continuing until I got the picture and just went into the abyss with it and allowed it to then guide me, as distinct from kind of constantly trying to kind of take the reins of what I thought was my identity, or what I
Mhm.
thought, you know, this is who I'm supposed to be, you know, this is who I'm supposed to be. And it's like those impulses are always a part of who we are. You know, part of me is the actress or the person working the desk at the healing center, and you know, I'm all the different facets and all the different things, but it's also like there was something deeper that was bigger than all of that, that felt out of control, which was writing. And it was like
Mhm.
on simultaneously out of control and providing greater relief and sort of solace and like calm, and like it just sort of flows out in a way that nothing else ever had. So
Mhm.
it was like I had to take heed of that. That wasn't going to go away. You know, it was always going to come up again in some other guise if I didn't, yeah, if I didn't listen. So I'm glad I chose to listen. It's just a matter of when we do, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm,
That seems, reasonable. I buy that. Um, you know, but I don't think it's always obvious.
mm.
And it doesn't sound like even in that moment that it was obvious, right? It's like hindsight gives us the ability to reflect back and go, "Oh, that was a fork in the road," or, "Oh, that was when the opportunity was really presented to dig in and be me," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, but,
In the
it's
moment,
like
it's just fear. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that I was curious. You said
Yeah.
you talked to your partner and
Yeah.
you thought it through before so it wasn't
Yes.
in
It
that
was it was
conversation.
that day. It was the same
It was that
day.
day.
It was a quick
Wow.
turnover in many ways. In a sense, I'm having the image of your husband pruning the
Yeah.
fig tree. He's like, he said to me, just, you know, he's like, you don't need this. You're more than this. Just do it. You know, you
Mhm.
don't get caught up in that, or in those games either. Like, seriously, you're a writer. Just do it. Just cut it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I want to do that. I feel fresh air when I even think about that. Like,
Yes.
okay. And then it was like, you know, he was very much in alignment with that. But, you know, my parents were like, what are you doing? Do you know how? And so ironic coming from like journalists and writers, but like, are you kidding? Like, you're just going to try and what, freelance, right? You know, contribute now? Like, you're going to try and survive. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then they'd either go very silent when it came up, or they would sort of be like, yeah, well, good luck to you. Mm-hmm. It was quite jarring because they'd always been very supportive of my being
Mm.
an actress, and were very sort of surprised, I think, by my choosing to write, which is, you know, one of those beautiful ironies of how parent, you know, child dynamics work, I suspect.
Yeah.
Because I'd always thought, no, I'm not like them. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a writer. I mean, I like writing, but like, I'm not like them, you know. So it was like this fantastic karmic stuff coming up too with all of that. It was, and I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what was, you know, and then in the middle of kind of writing all these different sorts of articles, which provided all kinds of other experiences, it was, you know, then starting to write about autism and learning about autism and being diagnosed as autistic. Like, all of these things then add up to me being able to sit here now and look back and go, oh yes, that moment was the major turning point. But at the time, it was just fear, jumping, trusting feelings and intuitions, and that, mainly that feeling of what is the most expansive choice now to make, even if it's scary, and being able to do that.
You know, I think a lot of people will tend to fall back on their old habits of choice making in many circumstances. So I like this idea that per, perhaps perhaps life keeps presenting you with the same opportunity until you take it, if that's your destiny. That's a nice idea. I dig that thought. And I wonder if there was a way to encourage people. Like, I don't even know how you would say, like, look for those moments, because I just don't think they're obvious, like, in that
Yeah.
moment. But it was
I
this choice to dive into the abyss, and I think that that
yeah.
maybe is the distinguishing piece.
And I think I've learned since that lesson, but also probably lessons before it and lessons since, that often the unknown, like to leap into the abyss and to go into that not knowing space, is so rewarding, like deeply, deeply rewarding in a way that, while holding on to what's comfortable, is very powerful. You know, the things that are sacred to us are sacred to us and they deserve to be honored and all of that. There's comfort and power in that too. But there are times where the possibilities, or in the unknown, I think their magic can outweigh the known, you know, and the parameters of our kind of conscious minds and how we assess things and weigh things up. Sometimes there's just something a bit bigger calling that
Yeah.
does seem a bit scary, but is where life is, you know. And I mean, yes, it takes experience with that. And I love the idea that the opportunity keeps arising, you
Mhm.
know, and keeps calling to you. I think that that has a nice all is not lost sort of
Yeah.
quality too, if you don't get the hint the first time, you know. And technically that had been there my whole life, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, what age was I must have been 20, 26 or at that point. But, you know, writing had been in various guises a part of my entire life till then. But it was only then that something deeper clicked about it, you
Mm.
know. So the signs are, I think, always there. Things can seem surprising or shocking or, you know, but I think that there's often, when you can look back and see that there were traces the whole time, it makes life also seem like a bit more of a kinder, gentler teacher. Even though in that moment it didn't seem that way, you know. I can
Right.
also see how there were signs, and if you're open to that, those lessons can become perhaps more of an adventure that's like that we're an active participant in, rather than just like, whoa, like what is happening, what's going on, oh my god, I'm scared, and all of that's there. But it can become a bit more like, oh, this is life,
Mm.
whatever this sort of space of dancing between the known and unknown. Like that's a healthy way to be. Yeah.
Well, Madeline, I could talk to you for days, I'm pretty sure. I definitely want everyone to go, if they like reading books,
Yes.
this is a good one.
Books. Books.
Books are
The
good.
unknown.
Um,
The
but is there
unknown.
anything is there anything that you would like people to know or like to leave people with as we draw things to a
Ah,
close here?
well, what's coming to mind is what I'd love people to take from the book, which is probably synonymous with what I'd love people to take from this podcast, their day, just any experience, I guess. God, it's pretty broad. I'm really building it up now, but
Yeah,
um,
I love that though.
no,
Don't be afraid to build things up. It can be for their entire experience. It's totally
okay.
allowed. Sure.
Thank you. Yes, permission. Yes. Um, but just knowing that your individual experience is a universal experience, that you belong just because you're on the earth right now. And every choice you're making, every change that's happening is exactly how it's meant to be. You are exactly where you need to be. Like everything is kind of perfect in its imperfection, but in its own way. And the book is a testament to that sense of belonging just because you're here. You know, I think that there can often be a feeling like we need to work really hard to belong. And often that dictates whether we're willing to change or not. They're all kind of, those things are quite connected. But if you trust yourself, no, it's not even about trusting yourself. It's just knowing you belong, whether you trust yourself or not. You know, it's great you're here. Life is magic, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Madeleine.
My pleasure. It's been lovely chatting.
Isn't it a lovely and comforting thought that perhaps each of us on this planet has our own unique destiny waiting for us to find and fulfill it? And that destiny is there waiting for us for no other reason than we belong here. Each and every one of us, me, you, we just belong. We're part of the ecosystem, and we have a destiny waiting for us to be fulfilled if we take the leap into the abyss. Even when, like the fig tree, our branches are unexpectedly pruned, we can still grow, thrive, and fully become ourselves. Pick up a copy of the novel A Room Called Earth by Madeleine Ryan from your local bookseller. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode at www.thechangedpodcast.com. And of course, please remember to click subscribe. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to share with a friend. This show comes to you from the Art of Change Skills for Life. Visit www.artofchange.com to explore how you might grow your communication, collaboration, and leadership skills through workshops, coaching, and more. Plus, you get to work with me. Thank you for listening to the Changed Podcast. I'm Aden Nepom, and I wish you the kind of experiences in life you're excited to tell stories about.